Dr. Edmonds, one of the major challenges that's faced at Seventh-day Adventist Church is retention of millennials. In your congregation and your work, have you been successful at it, and if so, why?
We've been improving. This is definitely not a molehill, but a mountain of an issue to solve. I can say, at least at our church, a lot of people just assume we've lost millennials. We've lost about 3 generations of Adventists, and so we're trying to rebuild that. Part of it is you have to rebuild, and I'm going to use sort of a modern terminology, you got to rebrand the culture of your church as one of a grace orientation. A lot of the folks that left, I hear stories all the time, people that left simply because they weren't loved, or they got pregnant, or they made a mistake, and they were disciplined by the church, and for whatever reason, they just didn't feel like the church was a place of acceptance and love.
Hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
Hold on. Go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
Answer again?
Go ahead. No. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So, it's critical that we start making our churches to resemble the character of Jesus Christ.
In what ways?
Well,
for example, how does our church differ from the Christ that we say that we're modeling?
Yeah, you asked that because, interestingly, Christ was always getting into confrontation with the church in antiquity. And we kind of are seeing the same thing now from a standpoint of what a church values. For the most part, many churches value history, they value tradition, and they don't really value people. And it's just hard to hide that. People will know, especially folks who are not a part of church culture, they can get a general sense if this is a place of a loving environment where they really value people more than they value their policies. And that's a hard sell to a church that has history like mine. But over time, through preaching and teaching, as well as through evangelism, you'll begin to see that breakdown.
Okay. Now, a couple of years ago, you created a little bit of mild controversy with your application of Noah's Ark.
Uh-huh.
Tell us a little bit about what you did in Cleveland and what was the after effect of that with the movie.
Yeah, so, there's this thing that we kind of are passionate about in Cleveland, especially with a lot of our young adults. One of the things we're seeing is that the agnostic and atheist population has increased significantly over the past few years. So we're not dealing with a Christian mindset or a theocentric mindset. For the most part, the mindset that a lot of our young adults and millennials are dealing with is a very indifferent mindset to God. Some of them are angry at God. So your evangelism approach has to change a little bit. Like Revelation Seminar is not going to really appeal to them because they don't believe in the Bible. So you really have to consider, how do I get people to be interested in the Bible who have no reference for Scripture? And so the big thing now is people love film. So when the Noah's Ark movie came out, we kind of told our congregation from the beginning that we don't believe that any movie can tell the story of the Bible. That's just not what movies do. Movies are for entertainment. But we do think that we can use this as a talking point, even with the era, to invite friends and families and coworkers from our areas of influence to come out. And that night we had about 350 people, 2/3 of which are unchurched. And after the movie was over, we had a conversation about what the Bible actually says about Noah, because most of you know the movie was a gross misrepresentation of what the Scripture says. But even in that negative, we were able to make it a positive by then exposing to them to what the Bible said. And it was a great success.
So how do you measure that success? How was that success measured?
I think you measure the success not based on the number of people that came, but based on the number of relationships that were fostered and maintained from there. So we saw about 5 people that were baptized as a result of that. And we saw a continuation of residual relationships where we've had other events where these people who normally don't come to church are actually starting to get comfortable hanging out at Glenville. That's a win.
Okay. So it's about relationships over memberships.
All day. You said it. It's relationships all day. That's the lesson we need to learn from Christ.
So what now can we expect from Glenville under your leadership in terms of reaching that millennial audience?
So the biggest thing right now that we're starting to realize is that modern traditional church, especially in the Black church, there's way too much emphasis on the pastor. And what we're starting to do now is we're starting to train lay pastors in our congregation to start house churches. We feel like house churches we're feeling like this is the best way to reach a millennial who has a lot of misgivings about going into an institutional church. So we kind of feel like if a young adult who's a lay pastor has been trained, has a home on a Tuesday night or a Sunday night or a Friday night, and has a meal, has a religious or spiritual discussion about the Bible and about God, open, non-judgmental, that's an entry point to invite them to before they invite them to church. Matter of fact, we made a rule: don't invite anybody to church before you invite them to your home. And we feel like if they grow comfortable with our members in their homes, in informal environments, and can see them living out the gospel, it'll be nothing to see them in church on Sabbath and ultimately to make a decision.
Now, let me ask an old-fashioned question. Dr. Edmond, is there scriptural validation for this approach that you're using?
Oh, yes, my brother. As a matter of fact, this is primitive godliness. The book of Acts, man, sets the model for us on small groups. Ellen White has a lot to say about small groups being a method not only to maintain members, but also to reach those who don't know the gospel. It's relational ministry. This is the ministry of Christ, and it was the ministry of the apostles. And it was under this ministry that the church grew most exponentially.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.